Oh, delicious sound as we get going. Welcome to Camp Okayas, powered by X2 Power. Yes, X2 Powers and X2 batteries. The ultimate lithium power to get you through all of your outdoor expeditions, whether it's hunting, fishing, camping. If you missed the conversation we had with Sean Budiak, actually of X2 Power a couple weeks ago, talking about some great products that they have and some other stuff coming down the line. It's pretty cool. You go check it out. It's up on our pages again. You can follow us on socials. You can do this at Camp Okayas. You can hit us up multiple different ways. In fact, hitting us up on socials is a great way to get involved in the show, just like the guest we have for this week. Mark, is it? I'm going to butcher it again because everyone butchers it. Petges, right? Petges?
Yeah.
Petges.
Petges.
Mark Petges. All right, so Mark has been a longtime follower of mine on socials. Again, at The Real Ritter is like my actual socials, but also the show itself at Camp Okayas. We talked a couple weeks ago, like, hey, you want to jump on the show? Like, you want to get invite to camp? Like, that's a big part about following the show and some of the stuff that we put out there in socials. You never know when I might reach out and be like, hey, come join. Let's chit chat, because that's what it's all about, is sharing stories, having a good time. As you saw in the opening, again, if you're following us on the YouTube stream, Lakefront's Dive Beer is my go-to today, which is like a very cheap classic Milwaukee, supposed to be like a dive bar type beer. I will say it is legit delicious, 4.2 ABV, so like you can crush the crap out of these things without like feeling it, so to speak. But more importantly to me, I'm a person that loves Louisiana, loves New Orleans. And in the state of New Orleans, there's a brewery by the name of Abita. Everyone across the country gets Abita Brewery. There's one specific beer that you will not get outside of the state of Louisiana, and it is Boot. Abita's Boot, to me, is one of the greatest, like, just crushable, like, hanging around the backyard. You're at a crawfish boil, you're at a cookout, whatever beer. This dive beer, like, legit reminds me of it in the best ways. And I don't know if that was on purpose or by accident, but I love it. So there's my shout out to Lakefront Brewery in Milwaukee, dive beer for today. What did you open up in the can there, Mark?
The Liney's summer shandy today. It's hot today, man. So gotta go with the Liney's.
Good. Oh my gosh. No, where are you? Because as far as I know, like your connections are in Wisconsin, but also like you spend a lot of time in Florida, because I know you fish a lot of saltwater stuff. So like where's home?
We do, yeah.
And kind of like what's your journey into like the outdoor space and fishing?
Home is southeast Wisconsin, Burlington area.
Okay.
The Florida stuff, we travel a lot. We got an RV back in 2013, I want to say. Started camping, traveling as a family, and that's been easily the best thing we've ever bought as far as, you know, family vacations go. Getting to go, that's taken us to a lot of cool places. Florida, I think our inaugural trip with that rig was down to the Florida Keys over a week or two. Just bounced our way down. I think we started in South Carolina first and made our way into along the Atlantic coast of Florida, down to the Keys, back up the Gulf Coast, through the Panhandle. Found a bunch of places we love to visit, and we just keep going back to those places.
I love it, man.
Yeah, fishing there is great.
Everything around the A1A, man.
Yes, A1A. We took that down the first trip. It's a slower ride. We like
especially with that rig.
Down.
No, what do you have for a camper rig? Because this is something that I know my wife and I, so like backstory on things. Originally this year we were supposed to have a camper, so we had one lined up. It was literally the point where, like, I was back and forth with one of the dealers. Like we were legit, like it was just put the deposit, sign the paper, we're good to go. No more than I was like, okay, so here's all the info deposit. The guy gets back, he's like, oh wait, what was that one again? Well, crap. One of our other salespeople sold that exact model, but don't worry. Like we'll custom order and they'll build you another one. And so I was actually dealing with one of the dealerships in Indiana, which, fun fact, that's where most of your campers are built. Your RVs are all built there in like northern, all the northern India. Yep. So if you are buying an RV and you want to save yourself money, buy from one of those dealers in northern Indiana, because they get such a better deal by like being right there, because you don't have all like the shipping back and forth and the freight and whatever crap that like raises up fees. Like legitimately the same camper that we were supposed to purchase, which we'll have next year. That's like the long run of the story, but we saved ourselves like almost 10 grand just by buying from that dealership and planning to drive to Indiana to pick it up. So long story short, then it ends up getting sold. We're like, no, just keep it. Like we'll get next year's model. And because we know that's what we want. We've looked around. So like next year, that's what we're going to start doing more as a family is like traveling around, especially me and my background in kayak fishing and fishing tournaments. It's great to have my family with me. And even if my family's not going to travel on one, if it's something even close that I'm going to like spend an overnight, it'll be great for me to be able to take my dog with me who absolutely loves me. Like I can't just leave him in a truck overnight, because I truck camp now when I spend nights, away. So, you can't leave a truck in an unair conditioned or a dog in an unair conditioned truck. So it's gonna be nice at least to pull the camper along to have an overnight or two overnight situation. But yeah, looking forward to that life. So, like your whole story and getting it really intrigues me of starting that camping and traveling and like what was like I think one of the biggest lessons that you've picked up over the years because everyone that lives the lifestyle that even owns any sort of RV or camper has something that's like, damn, I wish I knew this before I bought it.
Yeah, so we have actually a Class C motorhome, so it's not a pull behind. We drive it,
Oh, nice.
which at the time worked great for us. We have young kids or little, uh, which is great for me too, because driving that thing, I don't got kids locked up in car seats. They're free to move about the vehicle. You know what I mean? So they could be
That's
back there
nice. Yeah.
watching TV, use the bathroom if they need to do that while we're underway. So
Damn,
that worked out
you've
best for us. So we got a
you found the travel
motorhome.
cheat code, Mark. You found the travel cheat code there.
Yeah, my wife does most of that planning and that stuff. I can't take the credit for that. She's much better at that than I am.
We're all better as
But
a
yeah,
team, right? Like, I mean, I think we talked
yeah,
about that last week on the show. Like, when you get the entire family involved and everyone has a bit of a, sort of a little bit of skin in the game, as they say, that makes things so much more enjoyable and so much easier in the long run as far as and I actually got a message on our socials from someone that listened to the show last week was mentioning how we were talking about how getting the entire family or like getting wives involved in the decision making and this and that, like that it makes things easier to sort of ask for approval. Which I'm using the air quotes. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it, but if you're listening, I'm using air quotes with that get approval, so to speak. Not saying you should always communicate with your significant other, but it always, I think, makes the conversation easier when they've got skin in the game. And when they're the decision maker that plans all the things. My wife's the same way. She will call herself facilitator of dreams. I'm the dreamer, and that's what makes our relationship work so well.
yeah. That rig, it's been great. As far as lessons learned, but I wish I'd known before the maintenance on that thing. There's a lot of it, and that's going to be with any camper. Talk about buying new, saving money buying them. We bought used actually. That's how we bought ours. Uh, that's a good way to go, especially since a lot of these new ones that come out with a factory with kinks in them. So that gets all worked out by the previous owner, which is nice. But yeah, there's a lot of maintenance to it, but it was well worth it.
Yeah, see, that was what we went back and forth on of like trying to look at something used versus new, and was trying to figure out like what we like. And honestly, I'll be totally frank with you. Like these like camper show and stuff, I think they're a great place to go and see a lot of these. And that's what we had done. We'd went a couple times
Oh,
and
definitely, for
like we
sure.
had one specific model that we thought was like this was probably the one that we were gonna go with. Like we were pretty certain that we were gonna go with one specific model. And then we just randomly like, let's walk around and kind of look at everything. And we popped into this one and we're like, it's a little bigger than we thought we wanted. But like my wife straight when she walked in, she's like, this is home. And she's like, I didn't think I was a bougie camper person, but like I like the bougie camper. And the more
Oh,
I've
I
thought
am.
about
I'm,
and
I'm
like with,
never doing a tent
my
again.
life's yeah, like the two of us back in the day, we've done the tent thing, and there's a great
Oh yeah.
we're gonna go off the rails with this story. So one time we're camping in northern Wisconsin on a small little lake up in Nicolet National Forest, and we had done like, your typical camp, like you're grilling over the fire, made some s'mores, whatever, sitting around the fire at night, and we go to bed. Like, there was nothing left outside other than the pokers that s'mores were made on, and they even after the week, you still burn them in the fire and try and, char any sugar, any remaining stuff off of them. They were sitting on a table. There was a rustle outside in the middle of the night, and, like, it just kept going, and I was so frustrated. I'm like, I gotta chase this away, whatever it is." I throw the tent door open, I go out, it's like 2 raccoons, they take off running. We find one of the pokers like 30 yards back in the woods the next day. Like they legit were like smart ass animals. They were taking it. They were stealing that thing, but they were rustling around. But the funniest part of the story is I then turn around and start coming back to the camp. My wife is, or well, she was my fiance at the time. She's like laying like in the air mattress in the tent. She sits up and looks at me and goes, the next time you want to chase wildlife, can you at least close the tent when you leave? Like, what if that thing turned around and came in here? And I'm like, valid point, valid point. Maybe a camper is a better option than a tent.
Yeah, camp weather happens too, so campers will protect you from that, which is nice.
You know, our hot tip for the weather situation that we figured out with tents, depending on the size of the tent, obviously, is you can do tarps over trees and tarp it, which a lot of people do. But like the easy up pop up like 10 by 10 like shelters, those like tent
Oh
type
yeah,
things. Those things are awesome over a tent. Like a lot of people use them as like, put it up over like your dining area. Well, like, no, put it up over your tent. To me, that is the ultimate because then, you don't have to worry about roping and tarping and all that stuff. You just like pop up, set your tent under it type thing. And that actually helps like drain so much of the rain away. So that's the one thing that we did in a tent. That would be my hot tip. If you're tent camping and you can carry, if you have the ability to carry that excess weight and excess, stuff, having that like 10 by 10 pop up or 12 by 12, whatever you got to put your tent under it rather than tarping, I think that's a really good way to go about it if you're stuck doing the tent camping situation. I mean, obviously, someone like backpacking in the mountains, that's not an option. But so as
true.
far as like the traveling goes, like what led to the decision, Mark, for like, you and the family decide to go with like, the RV lifestyle and travel around and visit stuff that way?
I'm not sure what actually led to it. I'm trying to think about that now. It's been so long ago now. It's been over 10 years. But I think the first time we really tent camped with the kids was in our front yard, of course. And then I think we tent camped with them actually at a NASCAR race in the campground of the camp of a NASCAR track. That was fun. And then we, had a NASCAR race, you campground there. That's an RV show in itself. You see all these rigs come in,
No
how
kidding.
they're
I
set
can't
up,
even
and
imagine. Can't even imagine that.
yeah, that was a good time. But yeah, I think we just decided, yeah, let's do it and let's get an RV, let's go buy one, go travel around and start seeing some stuff. It was great.
That's cool. And that's like what we can't wait for. And like some friends of ours, like two really good sets of friends of ours, they've got, the I always struggle with calling camper or an RV because to me, like a lot of times RV is more like what you have, like you drive it around, sort of that sort of situation. And
Yep.
I was thinking like a camper as a pull behind, but most people when they say camper, they think like the Coleman pop up type things. Like no, like there's legit like basically the house on wheels you pull behind you. And so we've got some friends that do that, and one's got like a smaller like A-frame type thing. The other couple that we know, they're actually it's my wife's best friend, my son's godmother. They live just outside of, um, they're in Aiken, South Carolina, so they're just outside of Augusta, Georgia. They've got like like a Tajma camper now, like a fifth wheel type thing. I mean, it's only I think like a 27, 28 footer. Like it's not like the giant 48 footers that are out there that we've seen going. Oh my god, like this is legit a house. Like I'm not pulling that. What do you are you
They
renting a
got some big
semi to pull
units
that
now.
behind? It's incredible how big these things are. It's just insane. But so it'll be nice to like hook up with them and travel and see stuff. And my wife and I, we both really love to travel. And how many kids do you have again, Mark?
Three, three
Three.
teenagers
Okay.
now.
So like my wife and I, we have one. He's 6. And the biggest question that I think anyone who's a parent can relate to and has heard in one point in time, especially when you have your first, it's when are you going to have another? Are going to have another? Well, the answer for us is we're not. Like we decided early on, like we had our son, and it was like, we've got one. We're so grateful to have him. Having a second one is not going to make our life feel any more fulfilling than not having it. And again, to each their own. Like if you 8, 12, 16, like doesn't matter. We just decided like one was enough for us because we love to travel. We love to do and see things, and both of us kind of have our own hobbies and stuff. And it was like we don't want to put our kid ever in a situation to not feel apart. And quite frankly, it's selfishness. It's easier to travel with one than multiple, which having 3, I guarantee you can agree with that. Even as they're
Oh
older
yeah,
now, they were younger at one point. It's tough with multiple kids.
and then even with the RV, picking the RV out, and we, having one kid, your options on floor plans are way more abundant. There's a lot more smaller floor plans out there you can get into. Us, we were looking strictly bunkhouse right away because we knew they want, they want their own spaces, want their own beds, everything like that, and all the stuff they're going to bring with them and all that. So
And
yeah,
that
we're
was
definitely
that
looking
was
at that route first.
that's what we were looking at too, and that's what we've settled on as a bunkhouse because we wanted. We were thinking about just having the option of like we're somewhere and if someone wants to stay, even if we're staying somewhere close, whatever. But also like if our little guy eventually wants to bring a friend out on a trip with us or something like that, like to have those two spaces and or at least not if nothing less, him have his own like personal like his space, and then mom and dad have like our space, we have community space. Our dogs have their sort of space. Like we really were conscious of that. And I love the bunkhouse floor plans and all campers. Like a I'm a huge fan of that. Like I know that there's the Tajma campers and there's plenty of different versions and varieties of floor plans, but I just at the end of the day, I think bunkhouses period are far superior in so many different ways because of the ability to fit so many people essentially. Like it's more versatile and not only in use for yourself, but in resale, I think it makes it a lot easier.
Oh, for sure, definitely. The more room, the more space you got in there, yeah, the more it's worth. So
Love it. Well, let's talk fishing because I know that's a
absolutely,
common
here we
passion that
go.
you and I share is fishing, specifically smallmouth fishing. I know that you're a big smallmouth guy, much like myself.
Yep,
And I assume that comes from growing up
creek smallies.
in the general area here of southeastern Wisconsin, just Wisconsin, the Midwest in general. I feel like we are born and bred to love either smallmouth or walleyes, and a few of us the combination of the two.
Yep, I grew up well, and of course bluegills, the gateway drug of fishing. Of course, we got those. I still fish for bluegills, but
I
yeah,
yes, you're right. I don't
smallies
want
for
to let
sure.
them even still to this day, there's like at least the once or twice a season where I'm like, okay, we're gonna go out and I just gotta go catch some bluegills. Cause yeah, that is fun. I know a
Oh,
lot of guys that like that's their thing.
I've set out on smallmouth missions and bailed out because I got into some bluegills, and that's what I was doing that day. It's still a good time.
I contemplated that last weekend when I was pre-fishing for a tournament that I was in. I was out on the tournament was on the Madison chain, which eventually I'll do a video. A lot of the stuff will end up on my fishing YouTube channel and all that stuff too of what went on with that. But I was pre-fishing on a lake that I didn't intend to fish on of Madison chain lakes. And I'm out there on the pre-fish day on Friday, and I'm like, it's getting around. And I caught, two bass and a pike, and I'm going around. And suddenly I hit like a spot like in the shallows, and look, I'm there is just giant bluegills all over the place on beds. And I'm like, I'm really tempted to grab the spinning rod. My latest spinning rod. Grab and I kind of feel like this is fun to catch some of these bluegills right now. But no, 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 no. I gotta stop. Focus on the mission. We're here for a specific reason. There's some about bluegills that I don't know if it's just like growing up with them as kids that, like you said, it's the gateway drug. But when you see them and you have the opportunity, like I still kind of feel like drawn to it from time to time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Like
I
I
do a lot of my
remember,
smallie fishing at creeks down here.
yeah. So like, are
And a
you
lot of
are
these
you
creeks down here,
walking in then a lot of these creeks?
I'll use no, I'll take my paddleboard out. We'll go change gears a little bit here, back to kayaking. So I had a plastic kayak a few years ago, an Ascend 12T. Got rid of that and got a boat, inflatable paddleboard. It's got a pedal drive on it and everything. So it's a purpose built paddleboard for fishing. I'll take that out, float it up, and I pretty much pedal up or paddle up as far as I feel like doing that day, and just float my way back on creeks around here. And more often than not, I'm with a fly rod in the creek. Uh, I like doing that the best.
And that's what I was going to get to is that I think that's one of the most intriguing parts that I really admire and appreciate about you and the fact, we follow each other on socials is that you are that paddleboard person and going to show that you don't have to have, first off, a big boat. You don't have to have even like a kayak. There's other ways you can get on the water. You can enjoy these sorts of things. Now, when you say like it's not, is it the Hobie, like the Mirage Lynx, or is it something else that you have,
Oh,
Mark?
kind of. So it's a boat. It's a boat Rackham Aero HD. It's called. It's a
Okay.
12'4". It's a 39-inch wide inflatable. So it's super stable, super big. A
Super.
lot of
Yeah,
room on it.
that's
It's got a lot of rigging on it that you can put on. It's got a seat that comes with. It's got a pedal drive if you want to put that in there. So I'll use that sometimes. I used it last week actually on a lake around here. I went on a trip on it, but usually on the river, on the creek around here, I'll just throw a bucket on it, strap it down, take my paddle with, and go.
I love that.
That's it. Paddle, 2 fly rods, maybe a spinning
I
rod.
just I love that minimalistic side and just like, my wife's got, like, the inflatable stand-up paddleboard. Obviously, I've got, like, the huge fishing kayak sorta situation. There's definitely a difference in weight, and thinking about the person that
Oh, for
has a
sure.
car, basically, like a small little, let's call it a small little sedan, to put, like, even roof-topping a kayak like what I have, that's quite a venture, but, like, to have these now inflatable versions of things, I think it's so awesome, and I am the biggest person that's all about the easiest ways to get people access into the sports and into any sort of outdoor activities. I love they're coming out with these. In fact, the my manufacturer of my kayak, Lightning, that I work with out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, is where they're, made and they're headquartered and all that sort of stuff. They've come out now with an inflatable version that has the pop and pedal drive, the same thing, similar to
Yep.
the Mirage Links that they've just literally just are releasing here this spring, and they just went into like full on sale. They had like an Indiegogo like pre-sale, and now as of I think it was June 1st, they went like full on just like sale on their website. But it's really cool to have that ability to have something you can literally fold up into a suitcase essentially and throw in your trunk. Like I think it breaks away so many of those barriers. And these stand-up paddle boards are just as stable as anything you can imagine. Like you said, yours is 39 inches wide. My kayak's only 36. And you wouldn't think 3
Yeah.
inches difference is huge. It is a huge difference in width as far as
Yeah.
stability. And I don't have a problem in my kayak. I can't imagine how incredibly stable a 39-inch like just flat board is.
Yeah, there's a lot of 39 inches of touching the water. That's a lot of surface tension to try to break, to try to tip that thing. So it's
Right.
like I said, I can walk around on that thing, no problem. I had my Ascend. I could stand on it, not very well. I
Yeah.
could if I needed to, but this paddleboard's great. I mean, even down in the Keys, which down to Florida, in saltwater and waves and current and big boats going by and wind, still standing up is no big deal. Even casting a fly rod, no big deal.
That is so cool. So, did you grow up with a fly rod, or is that something that you kind of like worked yourself into, Mark?
I did. So I kind of really didn't really get into fly fishing until I was probably well, I shouldn't say didn't get into it. I was about 10 or 12. I got really started casting on my own for real, trying to do it and trying to, take interest in it and work at it myself. My grandparents and my dad had a fly rod, and my grandpa got me a fly tying kit when I was about 10. So I started doing that too and just kind of went all in on the whole fly fishing thing. And I just loved doing it. I mean, I spent hours as a kid on the side of a pond bank just casting for bluegills, and then on the banks of the river down here casting for smallies, learning those. So I pretty much grew up with it. Is how I got started in that.
It's so cool. Like I've got a friend from like back home, and I grew up in Green Bay. He to me is like one of the most interesting outdoors people that I know, and I'm gonna get Jason on this show eventually, and we'll chit chat because he to me is like just this master of everything. He's a big birder. If you're not familiar with that, it's someone like legit just goes out and hunts birds to take photos of them. Like it's not hunt to kill them. Like it's like rare birds, and he's a huge birder. And I've said on another show that I had in the past, like I feel like birders are the best friends you can have because they know and see so much and so many minute details about wildlife, about birds, about nature in general. And he's also the guy that like he's again so from Green Bay, spends a lot of time up in the Door Peninsula where I also kind of grew up essentially. But like the way that he fishes, and he's so much of just like waiting from shore or taking like a little layout boat used for hunting and like sneaking that in little like marshes and stuff and catching fish. And like he's in the last year and a half, it is 2 years, right around there, like the last 2 years, year and a half, really got into fly fishing, tying his own flies and catching all these different species with flies. Like not only small, like legit trying to figure out how to catch carp with a fly. And I'm just like, this blows my mind. It's such a cool, like minute, like there's such a it's a very niche thing to be able to do that. And he's just a very interesting person. Jason is to me one like if you're to say the most interesting man in the world, that to me is, the buddy Jason and what he does. And so like I can't wait to get him on the show eventually. And we're gonna hook up. I've mentioned something to him, but we'll get it eventually somewhere. But like the whole fly fishing thing, it really intrigues me, and I feel like it is as much as stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, whatever. That's such an intimate way to fish. I think getting a fly rod and doing it that way is even more intimate because there's so many little details that you need to have that are so important that I think make or break an entire trip. Do you agree, Mark?
Oh, for sure. There's so many levels of fly fishing. You start, basic, and then you work your way up the different casting techniques and different water, reading water and how you cast that water and how you approach that water and just all kinds of things about it. Even the fly selection and what color flies and size of the fly and the materials in the fly that you're using that time. I mean, the fly tying, that's a hobby within a hobby, really, as
Right.
part of that. I love doing that. Like I said, I got a kit when I was a kid, and now, pretty much just going and buying materials as I need them and tying, most of my patterns I use are pretty much rip-offs of what I find online and then just kind of tweak it for what I fish around here,
It's nice you
colors
can
and
do that.
sizes and all that. Yeah.
Like fly tying something you can do that with. Like, I can't just be like, "Hey, I love this." I don't know. Like, let's pick out like this Berkeley Dredger crankbait that's on my wall behind me looking at. I can't just like jump into my shop and make a replica of that. You know what I mean? Whereas like I can see
Right.
a fly. Yeah, like that's so cool about fly fishing. I think is that you can do things like that. You can be so much more customizable. I mean, yes, I could get all the kits and melt my own stuff and make my own jig heads or make my own worms or craws or creature baits or whatever. But like it's not the same. Like to me, fly fishing, you have so much more control over every single aspect of what you put on the line. Like you are in charge of every single aspect of that, unlike any other kind of fishing. And I think it's so cool. And the fact that you do that from a stand-up paddleboard while traveling around an RV, it's so awesome, interesting to me. Like I love that,
It's
and I
fun. Yeah.
really like. I don't want to say I'm jealous, but I'm jealous of that life. Like it is so freaking cool, Mark. I think that is so awesome, man.
Yeah. We have a good time with that. Especially last year, my first couple times down to Florida, I think actually our first couple trips down to Florida, I didn't even fish really. I just went down to Florida, saw the sights, did the things, traveling with the kids. You got some younger kids. We're out
Right.
hanging out and doing all the things you can do in the Keys. Lots to do down there. It wasn't really till I got that kayak, and then with the motorhome we have, hauling a kayak around became a challenge. That was how are we going to do this now?
How did you do
So
that, by the way? Did you like rooftop on the truck, like on the vehicle, or like
no,
because I know you have like
so
the drive around. So like, how did you do that?
I have a cargo trailer that I've had for a long time. It's just a 6x12 enclosed cargo trailer. The camper has no problem pulling that, so we threw it back there, and then with my kayak, and then eventually we accumulated our own little plastic fleet here. So my son and daughter each had a kayak. My wife got her own. She was the first to get this inflatable paddleboard, so she has one of those. Uh, and then hauling a trailer around became more of a hassle than we really want it to be. I mean, storing a trailer. A lot of these RV parks, there's nowhere to put a trailer. It doesn't fit. You got to store it somewhere. Uh,
No.
that's when I started seeing inflatables, seeing these and seeing that they're coming out with pedal drives now and all this and that. And like, that's a really cool idea. That would be way easier than pulling a trailer if we can just fold these up and shove them in a bag and throw them under the bunks or under the storage in the RV. So now we have our own inflatable fleet in the family. So my son's got the same board as I do. Each of my daughters have an inflatable paddle board. My wife's got her paddle board. So that's what we take around now.
That's so cool. Favorite place in Florida that you've been to? What is it, Mark?
Oh, well, the Keys are great. All the Keys are great. And the Panhandle. So the Panhandle or the Keys. I have to flip between those two.
Where exactly specifically in the Panhandle? Because now you're speaking my language. I'm very familiar with the Panhandle. I'm actually going to be visiting the Panhandle in October this year, and I spent a lot of my life as a youngster every spring in the Panhandle.
We'll be there in actually November this year too. Uh, Apalachicola, that area, my favorite
Okay, so I'm a
for
I'm
sure.
a Destin I'm a Destin Fort Walton person.
Okay.
Big fan of Destin Fort Walton. I've had family friends in like Fort Walton Beach forever. Love it. Navarre Pier, all the way over to there. Like my wife has been to Pensacola, and that's what really made her. She's like, "Oh, this is really great." I'm like, "I'm telling you, that Gulf Coast, the Panhandle up there, the Emerald Coast as they call it in Florida,
Oh yeah.
is one of the most underrated, beautiful places, especially the beaches anyway. Like the beaches and the water is so phenomenal. And so like it's gonna be fun. Take our little guy. The original plan was we're gonna take him to Mexico because I love Mexico. I've got so many connections to Mexico, Mexican culture, and all those things. But like with passports and all that, like we didn't have his passport yet, type thing. We're going start doing the math. And we're like, okay, that might be cutting it real close to go in October. So You know what? Let's do Florida. Same thing, beach. We're gonna be there in the Caribbean. Like, we can do that and start there, and then maybe next year we'll do the whole, Airbnb Mexico, like, we would like to do. And he's excited for both options, so it'll be fun. The
Destin's
question I
cool.
have is
We've
and we're
camped in
gonna be
Destin
doing the big
before.
Destin.
That's awesome there.
Yeah, the Destin Fishing Rodeo, we're gonna be there while that's going on, so it'd be cool, like, walk the boardwalk and see all the fish coming in. Like, AJ's Oyster Bar right there on the boardwalk is one of my favorite spots of all time, and I can't wait to get back there and have some oysters and just, like, watch the boats come in, and, like, I'm having, like, nostalgia as a kid going back to that. So, like, I'm looking forward to sharing that with my little guy, but I'm always curious when people say they go to Florida, like, what their favorite spots are because there is so much. Now, the whole Keys thing, that is a bucket list for me and my wife specifically because one of the things we wanted is when we were on the Keys, we wanted to go dive for lobsters when they have their
Oh
lobster
yeah,
season. We want to be like, you're doing the whole like snorkel, like free dive down the tickle sticks and nets and catching, those Caribbean spiny lobsters, which I'm sorry are my favorite lobster. You can love your Maine lobsters and your cold water and all that stuff. To me, that warm water Caribbean lobster is chef's kiss amazingness. I love them so much better. Maybe it's the amount of time I've spent in the Caribbean and how much I love it, but that is my go-to as far as, shellfish goes. So
our, our
someday
last trip
that
down
will
there, actually,
happen.
the Keys. Our last trip down there last Christmas, I actually I went and bought a tickle stick kit and everything for lobster. I got some intel on some lobsters near where we were staying, but it never happened though. Never got up to do it. Water was cold and we had some weird weather there this year. It was chilly. The water was chalked up. We were on the bayside, so I never got an opportunity really to dive down and do it. But I got the gear now.
That's
I want to
awesome,
do it.
man. Dude, I do seriously, when you do it, and I know you will, like I know you're gonna get a chance, you gotta let me know how I can't wait to see how it goes. Like to me, that is like a bucket list because I love snorkeling. I love like kind of like free diving, sort of, that stuff. So like the fact to like dive and get like I'm the person that again, we're both in southeastern Wisconsin. I keep pushing for like, why can't we just spearfish? I would love nothing more than like free dive and spearfish in lakes. Like set
I
my
want to
limits
try
like
that too. We started. Yeah, we were starting to follow a guy on YouTube, Key West Waterman down there. He's down in Key West. He's a spear fisherman. We was watching him, and I'd love to do that. That would be fun to do.
Like, I think Michigan allows it for certain species. But like, I mean, look at here, like Minnesota, our neighbor to the next, like right next door to us, they allow like pike in winter. Like, you can legit like spear them through the ice. Like, we can't do that in Wisconsin. Certain like the Native American tribes, they can, which they can do whatever they want and should. And I totally am all on all the traditional and all that stuff. But I would love nothing more. And like, why can't they allow us to spearfish like you could in the ocean? Like, give it it's one fish limit, like you can go out hook and line and catch one walleye. Why can't I go out and spear one walleye, so to speak? I think that would be such a fun way. Maybe just like the bow hunting side of me that I think bow hunting is great too. It's like combining fishing and bow hunting together. I just think that would be such a fun sport and a great way to like dive and like, see nature and be in it. That's where I'm at. I'm just, throwing my theories out there. I'd love to be able to spearfish here in the Great Lakes. Like, think about the crystal clear water of Lake Michigan. You get to dive down there and spear walleye, or like, okay, I'll say it, spear a smallmouth. Like, how freaking cool would that be? I mean, as a guy that
It would be,
loves
yeah.
bass and loves smallmouth, what an amazing, like, crazy experience that would be. And you, like, if you know that you're, sending that arrow, like, that that fish you're harvesting. It's not like a catch and release thing. You can't. So like you have to be very choosy. And I don't know. I think it would be a really cool, fun experience. And I hope that someday in my lifetime I'm able to do that and it becomes a legitimate thing. Whether it will or
Yeah.
not, who knows?
Yeah, my
All right.
bucket list down in the Keys now actually is tarpon. That's my ghost right now that I'm chasing.
So you've not
But
caught a tarpon.
I've I have not caught a tarpon. I haven't landed tarpon. I'll say that. I've had
Okay.
tarpon on my line twice, but that's it. Haven't been able to land one.
That is an impressive, amazing fish, and that's not one that I've ever had on a line. I've never fished for him either. Most of my experience saltwater fishing in Florida was cobia. We'd be out there in the spring, cobia fishing, or we'd be out like grouper and amberjack fishing reefs and stuff like that. Which I think that's most people their common experience is fishing reefs. The cobia thing was a little different, which they're a really fun, interesting species that are incredibly aggressive. And it's the fun
Oh
part
yeah,
about fishing for
very
them.
shark-like.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and they will follow, like, so you find like a headfish or an ocean sunfish, as they're actually called, floating around, or like a sea turtle, or like, kind of like you think of mahi falling around like a scum line, or some like, palm tree floating around, something like that, right? So you roll up on something like that, and you immediately like casting big ass hair jigs at it. If there's cobia, like they'll be falling around in that, and they will hit anything they can. And that was honestly every time we've ever been around a cobia was that they were following a sea turtle, a sunfish, something like that. It's amazing that they're just like they're such, I don't want to say like opportunistic, but I mean that they are. They're following around something because they know it's going to attract smaller fish, and they're going to just eat those smaller fish. It's symbiosis of the ocean is so amazing. And most of Kobe end up having, the like lamprey type things, the little, I forget what exactly they're called, that sharks always have like stuck on them. It's the symbiosis of the ocean to me is always so impressive. And cobia to me represents that in a nutshell, that they will follow around other things and also attack anything that comes anywhere within their vicinity, which makes them, I don't say easy to catch, but easy to catch compared to some other fish that you may specifically target in saltwater, just from my personal experience.
Oh yeah, yeah. The other saltwater, like you said, the panhandle. If I had to pick one fish to fish for the rest of my life, that I can only fish for that one fish, it'll be a redfish for sure in the panhandle.
They are a lot of fun. Freshwater drum
Oh, they're great to.
and redfish.
Yeah, reds
They're
are
the same
great.
same species. So if you catch sheephead in the Midwest, freshwater drum, a redfish is kind of just that
Yep.
on steroids.
Yep. And then sight casting them in shallow water, that you can't beat that. And when you hook into them, they got shoulders, man. They will go to war with you on the end of a fly line for sure.
Oh, I can't imagine the flying. Like, I've only been on like on spinning gears. I can't imagine fly line, and that's not even to mention like the table aspect of redfish.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's the other reason. I mean, you can eat redfish too, and they're great. Redfish on the half shell, just filleted, skin on, grilled down, and eat
Nailed
them
it
up.
right there. So Greg Tubbs, who is the only guest that's been on the show twice so far. Tubbs was recently down in, was he in Mississippi or Texas? I think it was Texas. He was somewhere this past like week or so, and he posted on social, and he sent me a text separately of things. Um, Redfish on the half shell, and I was like, man, is that not the greatest fish preparation? Period. Like, to me, there is nothing better than redfish on the half shell. The second favorite to me, and I'm saying of all fish preparations, is redfish collars, grilled redfish collars. Or you call them like in the
I haven't had
Midwest,
that.
we refer to as like walleye wings. So just it's
Okay.
basically it's the under so when you got the gills, it's that part from there to including like the bottom. I forget what those fins called. My brain is like I'm jello at this point in the evening. But it's that chest. It's that part that's always thrown away. But there's like a legit piece of meat on the chest portion of the fish. Walleyes have them, so they come like walleye wings in the Midwest. Redfish have them too. Redfish collars, tuna collars also are a good thing. Oh my gosh, like you do almost little wings like grilled on the grill. Oh, next redfish you catch, I'm telling you, you catch a couple of them. Just take that like front portion from that
Or that.
fin up to where the neck, we'll call it the neck connects with the gills there. The collar, man, grill those things out. It is delicious piece of fresh seafood.
Yeah, redfish, and then whole grilled snapper too. That's the other one I love to have too.
Okay, yeah,
Those are great.
I've never myself grilled a whole, like I've had it in the Caribbean, like in Jamaica. I have like snapper escovitch and things like that. But blackened snapper was always my thing. We'd always,
Oh, yeah,
take out
any fish, black and saltwater fish,
blackened
especially.
snapper, which the equivalent I put to it. And again, you're good. People will hate me for it, but like out of cold water, a blackened smallmouth bass, it is like legit. You could put them side by side. You will not tell the difference between a blackened snapper and a blackened smallmouth bass. They are delicious table fare. I'm not like it's like go out and like slaughter every smallmouth you can, but like there's been a time or two in the past where it's like that perfect little 14-inch smallmouth. Like it's just like, man, this is gonna be the most delicious thing in the world. And you know what? Let's be real. All species and all things need responsible culling and that sort of thing. So your tag, your hunt, your tag, your fish, whatever it is. Like I'm never here to like say what you can or can't do, but I know a lot of times when you start mentioning bass, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, no. And me as a bass fisherman, even
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of that.
you know what, you do what you want to. Yeah. Why is it with bass that they are the one species that everyone's so like a bluegill? We were talking about them. No one's ever like, oh no, don't catch and cook a bluegill. Like really, at the end of the day, what's the
They're
difference?
delicious. That's what you catch them for.
They're both the sunfish species at the end of the day.
Yep,
You know, because maybe it's such a sport fish aspect that's come from like bass that I don't
it
know.
could
Like,
be. Yeah,
do you follow Oliver Nye at all, or like know of Oliver Nye?
I don't know.
Okay, so
No,
he's a big he's got a California, big bass fisherman, this big swim bait guy. He's been working a thing with the California, I think it's the California parks, and he's posted some very controversial things in socials of like giant bass, like cooking them, or like straight like a cooler full of like just straight legit 20 plus bass, like 20 plus inch bass in a cooler. And this is the project that they're working on of like actually catching and culling out some of these 20 and smaller fish to like create these big true like trophy fisheries. And that's what they're working on, and like kind of explaining how like harvesting these fish doesn't harm them necessarily. Like the smaller ones, the ones you should harvest if you want to build this like trophy potential. And I think it's really interesting experiment and really interesting concept and theory that Oliver's working on with believe it's the California Natural Resources or whatever. But it's little snippets I've seen in the socials. I'm like, that's really interesting, and I love it. I love like all the negative stuff that people say about it. And again, maybe in a bass guy, I don't really ever keep bass. Like I've said, like the occasional smallmouth, super cold water every now and then. That's about it.
water. Yeah, the cold
But
water is the key for keeping them. I don't keep many throughout the summer, even early spring. I won't. But cold water, yeah. I mean, generally I don't. I don't usually keep bass, but I have before, and I probably will again.
it's like white bass is the biggest example I give too. Like, you
Yeah,
know, growing up where I grew up, like the Wolf River, the big white bass run. And I actually had a tournament on the that chain and then the Wolf River last year. They were going out, and I made a mistake of like trying to fish the river instead of fishing the main lakes during that tournament. The amount of boats out there just fishing white bass, it was insane. And like forgot as a kid what that was like. And that's to me the only time that white bass are worth keeping. Like when they're spawning on that cold water, they are delicious. But you catch a white bass on like the Lake Winnebago chain in the middle of summer, not good. Like just don't bother. Just catch and release. Do not eat them. It is not great table fare. And I'm not saying don't do it as like like personally, if you're looking at it taste delicious, I wouldn't do it. To me, it's muddy. It's cold water is key to any fish necessarily, and that's why I think a lot of people are drawn to trout, and why trout is kind of more of the eating species of fish in North America, or most people in. I hate to like their prestige, I guess, put on trout, and I think it's because of that. They're a
there
fish
is.
out of
Yeah,
cold water that fights well and tastes delicious. Because most people that
yeah, especially
fish
in
trout, it's not really a catch and release. Most trout are kind of caught.
yeah, especially in the fly fishing world. Really, fly fishing is really associated with trout more than anything.
Mhm.
You don't typically think of bass fishing when you're thinking about fly fishing. That's pretty much all I ever fly fish for. Even as close as we are to the driftless, one of the best places for trout fishing in the country. I'm not a trout guy. I just haven't really got into it ever. But we have smallmouth in my backyard, so I fish for smallmouth.
Pound for pound, I would take the smallmouth too. I'm with you on that, Mark.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, like I agree. Like most of my trout experience is lake trout. And I mean like lake trout, I mean like you're talking the browns, the steelhead, all that in Lake Michigan, the lake versions of these trout. And you know, being a first mate back, so like that's my thing. I've never been that like stream trout fisherman. I I love the idea. I think it's great. Like I know if I lived out west, I definitely would be into that sort of thing. Like if I lived in Colorado or Montana or Idaho or Wyoming, where we talked to Levi last week on the show, I would totally be into that sort of thing. But just being in the Midwest, yeah, it's too easy to have other species of things. And you know, you mentioned trout being the biggest thing people think of with fly fishing. My experience back, like, guest guiding us in Canada, there's a lot of guys that are starting to like actually specifically want to fly fish muskies and giant pike on the fly. And I think that's so cool. Like just the fact of like catching a muskie period and the prestige that's put on like the fish of a 10,000 casts, which I can tell you is BS. You can catch them on less than 10,000 casts. I've literally watched back to back casts catch back 40-inch. Like it's don't let that whole like theory of 10,000 casts scare you away from muskie fishing. They can be caught. But doing it on a fly is, I think, really cool. And I'm that person that like I love these like cool intimate things to the point. Again, to keep bringing up Canada, the last couple of seasons I've been up there, I decided that like my thing was going to be if we hook a muskie on a boat that I'm in, we're gonna like fight the muskie. We're not just gonna like net it and like release it. No, we are going to like get up on shore. We're gonna get out of the boat and to get in the water with the muskie, and we're gonna release it in the water. I've got photos. I got a video of me doing it with muskies. To me, that is the
Nice.
most intimate, cool, fun experience with those fish because it's. I think that's a part of like the fair chase with it. Like, okay, I hooked you. I'm gonna keep you in the water the whole time, and I'm gonna get in your element and let you go. And it's so cool to put your hands on the fish in the water and knowing they can turn and bite you. But let's a muskie's not going to bite you. Just like a shark is not looking to eat a human. Fun fact: we have too much like iodine in our blood. They don't care for humans. If they bite humans, it's by accident. There's your shark fact for the day too on the show. But I I think that's cool, and I really want to support, push, and encourage people to continue that aspect of fly fishing other species than trout, smallmouth like you do, Mark,
Oh yeah.
muskies, all those things. I think it's an interesting, fun, intimate way to take part in the outdoors, like we talked about earlier, to have control of everything you do, and the trophy aspect. I think there's so much more of a reward of that.
Yeah, I
I'm
know
not
guys
fly
that have
fishing, but
done.
again,
I know guys that do fly fish for muskie. They fly fish only for muskie. That these guys do, and I hope to get into that one day. I've tied some flies for muskie already. I've got some stuff ready to go, but I just haven't had a chance to go out and do it yet. But hopefully that's coming up.
no, we've got some great opportunities in southern Wisconsin to do that. There's so much around the area. A lot of people live like northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, Canada is like kind of the place to fish muskies, but there is so much all over the place. You get down to Tennessee, there's some great, chances and opportunities to catch muskies.
Yep.
Into Kentucky, they're everywhere, and they're an interesting, fun species to catch. Um, I'm trying to remember if I've ever eaten muskie. If I had, it might have been I'm trying to think, they've smoked from someone at one point in time back, like when I was a kid, like a neighbor of our cabin. Like I've that I can think of, I've never eaten muskie. I can't imagine it's much different than a pike. Probably a little more gamey, just based on size, age, all that sort of thing.
Could be, yeah.
But
Could
yeah,
be. I've had pike.
favorite
Pike's
fish
pretty
to
good too.
catch. We all love pike in the Midwest. I mean, that's to me one of the best fish to catch to the ice. Your favorite fish to catch, though, is it smallmouth, Mark, or is there a saltwater species you prefer to fish for and catch instead?
Like small. I'm always in love catching smallies. Like I said, redfish too. If I'm in the salt, redfish is what I love to catch. Flounder are great to catch too. Those are a blast too,
Hmm.
because you never know where they're coming. You never know where they're coming from. You just run a bait along the bottom, or even a fly along the bottom. Just get something that'll run deep, and they just come out of the sand out of nowhere. So they're fun to catch too.
I've seen guys gigging flounders in Florida. I'm thinking like that'd be
Really.
fun too. Like walking the shallows at night with a light and like spearing like straight gigging them out of the sand. That's kind of interesting and fun too.
That'd be cool. Yeah, flounders are fun to catch. Sea trout are good too. Those are fun. Those are always a good fight. But any of the inshore species really you catch down in the Panhandle area or anywhere in Florida on the Gulf there, they're all great to catch. But yeah,
Have you
smallies for
gotten
sure. That's
have you gotten
my
into
top.
Spanish Max at all in Florida? Doing like Spanish mackerel or kingfish, the king
I
Max?
haven't. I haven't really fished offshore really per se in
Okay,
Florida. We did, a couple of, we did a party boat fishing trip out onto the reef, snappers and grunts and
right.
basically the panfish of the salt water basically.
Yeah.
Which those are always fun to catch too. But yeah, inshore species is probably about all I've ever done really.
Occasionally, you get into some of the Spanish Max and bluefish and stuff on, from shore. Again, I mentioned, Greg Tubbs. He does a lot of fishing, and he goes to like I think it's like Port St. Joe areas where Tubbs is at a
We
lot.
were there last year,
Okay. And he does a lot of just straight
last
like
spring.
beach fishing, like surf fishing right from the surf, which I've done not in Florida. Most of my surf fishing's all been in Mexico, Costa Rica, and Jamaica, like straight off the surf. It's an interesting, fun way to fish, but he's got all kinds of things. There's a lot of guys that'll get into some of those, different, more pelagic type species, even just surf fishing. It's kind
Oh
of an
yeah.
interesting, fun way to go about things. But I don't
Actually,
want too much of your time.
last
It's
spring we
busy,
stayed in Port St. Joe.
Okay. Um, how people find you if they want to follow you on socials or reach out to you about any questions as far as the camping, the fishing, the anything here, Mark.
I'm on Instagram. It's just my name, Mark Petges. That's it. Pretty much on Insta where I'm at mostly on that stuff from
Mostly
my
on Instagram.
fishing, camping, travel stuff.
Well, I love following you. I appreciate you following me personally and Camp Okayist and being a part of the show and grabbing a stool and joining up. That's what this is all about. Is just hanging out, having a conversation, sharing stories. Um, being that we're kind of all okay at things, I'm kind of curious of
For
what
sure.
is or what would you say is your most okay moment in outdoors? Your most okayest story. I don't think it's happened to you while in the outdoors.
I'm gonna use my turkey experience this spring. My first ever turkey hunt. It was my first season I had a turkey tag. I only got the week I drew. I didn't buy any more tags. I had 7 days basically to get it done. I had a good friend that helped me out a lot, taught me a lot of things, took me out with him a few times. My last day solo, basically, I went out pretty much. I like to run and gun hunt. That's what I don't like sit. I'm not very good at just sitting still and being quiet. I like to move around a little bit. So I found a bunch of birds that afternoon. It was after work. I ended up stumbling upon a hen. I spooked her right along the edge of a wood line in a field. Hen took off into the woods, and right there I should have stopped. I should have sat right there and waited and hung out, but I didn't. I'm like, well, I spooked her. I'll keep walking. So I started walking up the hill. It's basically a big alfalfa field with woods next to me to my right, and I'm walking uphill. And every 10 steps or so, I'd pull the binos out and glass the field just to see what I could see. And the second time I did that, I stopped, and there was a little red head poking out of the alfalfa, looking right at me. He's probably a good 65, 70 yards away. He was too far to shoot. But we pretty much just sat there and had a staring contest for about 15 minutes through my binoculars. And as I figured, it's my last day. This is it. This is my one shot. He might be too far to shoot, but I'm going to try it anyway. So I dropped my binoculars. As soon as I dropped them, his head picked up all the way and he started running. Saw the beard on him. I picked up, I fired, completely missed. He ran off in the woods, and that was the end of my turkey season for 2024.
It sounds similar to the story we talked about with Tubbs when he was on the first time during his turkey season with that one. He had one come out and come past him, and he completely straight and missed him and tried again, just as a latch ditch effort. If you want to listen to the full story, I believe it's like our second or third episode of Camp OK as Greg goes through and tells the whole story. But yeah, that definitely sounds pretty okay. I mean, I had an okay moment this weekend in my past tournament. I'm gonna just like leave that as the cliffhanger of eventually I'll get to the story of how I cost myself a top 10 finish this past weekend. And I mean, I legit cost myself top 10 finish. Yep, that happens. That's when you play the losingest sport that you can possibly play. You're gonna have those days. So
well, it's like call it fishing and not catching, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's fishing, not catching. Well, thanks again, Mark. Appreciate it. Again, appreciate the follow. Appreciate following Camp Case. Appreciate you jumping on the show. The stories.
Yep.
Again, we're all just okay trying to get through things. I appreciate you. Again, if you want to be a part of the show, don't be afraid. Follow us. Make sure to hit us up on socials. Maybe we'll invite you. We always love hearing things. Like I mentioned, a couple of stories I've got, off of previous shows of things we've talked about. You're saying, oh yeah, I agree with this, or don't ever be afraid to reach out. Like that, we're all just one giant okay community of people, and that's what the show is here for. And so we appreciate you, Mark. Thank you so much. Next week we're gonna, I don't know, turkey was in. All right.